One of the things I really love about Umamusume, the various anime series in particular, is just how real the stories being told are. This is accomplished on several levels. The most obvious, of course, is that the stories are based on the real lives and careers of the horses the characters bear the names of. So we are really not getting a purely fictional story, but rather an adaptation of something real, as I talked about in a previous video. But something else that makes these stories hit hard is, well, how relatable they are to both fans of sports in general and to people who are athletes, even amateur ones like myself. Many of the challenges the horse girl athletes face in Umamusume are the same things real-life human athletes face. Of course, the real horses faced much of that too, but giving it a human, or mostly human, face makes it hit much harder and makes it much more relatable. So, in this series of undetermined length, I will talk a bit about how some of the sports-related themes and struggles seen in the various Umamusume anime shows and films, and parallel the character there with a real-life human athlete, most likely in a sport that I'm personally familiar with, Ninja Warrior or Major League Baseball, who faced a similar challenge or struggle, and who, in some cases, almost eerily parallels the Uma in question, to illustrate the point that these sports struggles, sports stories, and sports triumphs are an experience shared over both real horses and horse girls, and real-life human athletes, and perhaps to encourage fans of one to give the other a shot. Unfortunately, the nature of the world of sports is that not all careers end in triumph, with a big win after a slump, a comeback from injury, or just total domination until the time to retire arrives. All too often, promising careers are cut short, robbing both a gifted athlete and their fans of seeing them reach their true potential. While the instances where a dramatic, sudden, tragic injury cuts those dreams short tend to be the ones we remember, mostly due to how shocking they were, there is another sort of tragedy that renders an athlete no longer able to compete, which is a slower, arguably more frustrating and tragic process. That being when one's body just fails them. And despite fighting against that reality, and despite trying everything possible to overcome it, the athlete finds him or herself forced to admit that their career is in fact over, far sooner than they would have expected. In the Umamusume anime, the best example of this tragic sort of sports tale is of course the story of Agnes Tachyon, as depicted in the beginning of a New Era film, and that of course is directly based on the real horse's story. Both in real life and in Umamusume, Tachyon was practically an unstoppable force on the racetrack. Not once was Tachyon defeated in a race, and looking that unstoppable, there were obviously expectations of truly generational greatness. However, it was sadly not to be. Tachyon's career only lasted for a grand total of 4 races, ending on the high point of winning the G1 Satsuki Show in 2001. Tachyon the horse developed a bowed tendon, a serious form of tendinitis in his left foreleg, a weak legs condition inherited through his dam line. While he fortunately was able to retire, otherwise relatively healthy, and had a very successful career as a sire, until dying rather young at age 11, everyone had to wonder what could have been if this condition had not forced his retirement, to the point where he's become known as the Phantom Triple Crown, for the belief that he could have pulled it off if not for the health issues that shortened his career. We can never know exactly how the horse felt during this time, of course, but in the Umamusume movie, Beginning of a New Era, in which Tachyon is a major supporting character, we see this struggle personified in a way that we couldn't get from the real-life horse, if the horse had those same feelings as he struggled with his injury. There really isn't a single catastrophic moment where everything changed for Tachyon. Rather, it's more a realization of a growing problem over time. And then we see, on screen, the slow, creeping toll it takes on her, who had been at the height of her career when it ruined everything. She largely retreats inward, feigning aloofness and nonchalance to others, while she obsessively searches for a solution, a way to let her return to the track. And the quiet desperation, as more time passes without a solution, to the point where it seems like she almost tries to lie to herself that she's alright with her new reality. It isn't necessarily told to us directly, but you can see, through the state of her room, through the way she acts, just how much this actually affects her. Since, as like with any proud athlete, she doesn't really want pity, so she suffers alone, but she definitely suffers, as we see when she's all by herself all the time, with bandaged feet as she does her research, or when she's watching others race obsessively. The real Tachyon, of course, never managed a return. As we mentioned earlier, there isn't always a glorious return from injury like Tokai Teo had. Umamusume Tachyon, as is often the case in the franchise, does get a somewhat vague, happier ending, as we do see her running at the end with her friends, similar to how Silent Suzuka in the first season of Pretty Derby recovered from her injury. Though, of course, since the franchise does its best to adhere to the real-life race events, neither returns to the prestigious Twinkle series. Tachyon, like Teo, whose real-life career ended with another injury after the Miracle Run, and Mejiro McQueen, whose tendon injury also ended the real horse's career, gets to run with her rival again in some fashion, like how Suzuka went to race in America, as was the plan for the real horse before the tragic injury. So, like with many other sports-related themes in Umamusume, there are IRL human athletes whose careers went down similar paths. And today I'll draw on one from the sport I've been a fan of for longest, Major League Baseball. It can be a tough life being a Mets fan, sometimes more than others. But that only makes the not frequent enough bright spots stand out all the more. One of those for the Mets over the past couple decades, in the 2000s and the 2010s, yes, I know I'm showing my age here a little bit, was the career of David Wright, which began in 2004. And he was actually drafted in 2001, the same year in which Tachyon retired. In an era with so many terrible Mets seasons, he was always a joy to watch. He remains to this day the best third baseman the team has ever had, both in terms of hitting and fielding. And he was a 7-time All-Star, 2-time Gold Glove winner, and 2-time Silver Slugger winner, among other accolades. He was the face of the franchise and team captain from 2013 until 2018, and nicknamed Captain America after his heroics in the 2013 World Baseball Classic. And he holds numerous Mets records, including hits, RBIs, and doubles. From about 2005 until 2013, he was one of not just the team's, but the game's superstars, and seemed poised for an easy Hall of Fame-worthy career. But then the injury issues began. Like with Tachyon, Wright didn't suffer some sudden catastrophic injury on the field, but rather something more chronic, more insidious, that there was little he could do about. For the next 3 seasons, he missed significant playing time as he attempted to treat, or at least manage, various neck and shoulder issues, particularly a condition known as spinal stenosis, which is a narrowing of the spaces within your spine that puts pressure on the nerves that travel through it. Usually this is something caused by age-related wear and tear, and then often results in pain, numbness, or weakness in the legs, back, neck, or arms, all things you need to play sports. But its sufferers are usually on the older side, people in their 50s, if not even older, not athletes in their prime. But in Wright's case, he, like Tachyon with his tendons, had a genetic predisposition to the condition, namely a narrower-than-average spinal canal, which made him more susceptible to the condition. During many of his attempts to come back and play through the condition and the pain it caused, he still distinguished himself well and showed why he was one of the best to ever do it, such as helping the team reach the World Series in 2015, though he couldn't play too much during that World Series itself. However, the condition was becoming too much to deal with. In 2016, he would spend hours on physical therapy before games to just try and manage the spinal stenosis, only to then suffer another injury. The collection of separately relatively small, but still frustrating injuries, which very likely owed their existence to him trying to play, despite his deteriorating condition, only grew in 2017 and then 2018. And in the middle of that season, the painful decision was made to retire. Though he did return for 2 games late in the season, more or less as a formality to sign off, before thanking the fans for their support and calling it a career after more than a decade, all spent with the Mets. In rewatching his emotional final press conference recently, I'm not going to play the audio to avoid getting copyright struck, but I recommend listening to it, I was really reminded of Tachyon's quiet suffering through her own injury in beginning of a new era. You can see why she did not choose to do her own press conference regarding her condition and treatment. Fortunately, just like Tachyon, David Wright's legacy has lasted beyond his injury-shortened career, brought down not by some freak accident, but by his own body failing him. Tachyon's period as a breeding stallion led to storied descendants like Die with Scarlet, while Wright, while taking more time for his own family of course, has remained involved in the New York Mets organization since his retirement, in an advisory role, and last year he was inducted into the Team Hall of Fame and his number retired. A fitting tribute to his time with the team. But the baseball fan, and not just the Mets fan, but of the sport in general, can't help but wonder what could have been if he hadn't been injury-plagued and forced into retirement. He truly was good enough to have been a shoo-in for the Baseball Hall of Fame, if he'd been able to keep playing. And while he did receive a Hall of Fame vote, and so remains eligible on the ballot for now, his odds of making it in are really not very great. As for Tachyon, both the horse and Umamusume, we could only speculate how many more races would have been won. Could she have pulled off the Triple Crown? But based on what we did get, the horse Tachyon would have almost certainly made the JRA Hall of Fame if he kept performing as he did during his short career. But, since it wound up being such a short career, that never happened. Such is the nature of things sometimes. But at least there was opportunity for a productive life afterward. I hope this doesn't feel too much like a downer video, but it really is another point of praise for Umamusume that while it does lean toward the happier side of sports competition, in part via giving the Umas happier endings than the horses they're inspired by at times, it does get into these very real, sometimes painful aspects of an athlete's career. And it's just really neat how it translates the struggles faced by these horses, who obviously couldn't directly tell us their story, and how they felt during their careers, into ways that truly do mirror the experiences of IRL human athletes, whose written and spoken testimony we do have, both the glory and the excitement, and the heartbreak and frustration. It's all part of the same sporting experience, and why Umamusume, in my opinion, really is the best sports-focused anime franchise of all time, if not the best sports-focused fiction series of all time, period. It tells stories that transcend not just the anime, but even the real sports events they're based on. It's also why I maintain that sports fans who aren't particularly big anime fans should give Umamusume a shot, and that Umamusume fans who aren't particularly into IRL human sports should maybe check some out too. There's really a lot of overlap, and people on either side of that fence may find something they like over on that other side. So what do you guys think? Are there any fellow fans of both sports, any sport, and Umamusume out there who have also seen parallels between one or more Umamusume characters and IRL human athletes? As I briefly mentioned at the beginning, the only two sports I really follow regularly are Major League Baseball and American Ninja Warrior. So it's very possible that there are athletes in other sports who I don't know about with parallels worth talking about. But more importantly, let me know if you found that some of the stories we saw with the horse girls in Umamusume hit harder for you because you felt a connection between the stories of these horses, both anime and real, and either a human sport you follow, or even one that you partake in yourself. If you enjoyed this video and like to support me in what I do here, my books and light novels are all available on Amazon, and you can get early access to videos, sneak peeks, and updates on my upcoming manga and other projects by subscribing over on Patreon. I also offer channel memberships, which get you access to monthly members-only watch-along streams. And as always, if you have any thoughts on this video, or is anything Umamusume related you'd like me to talk about, definitely share them in the comment section below. I'd love to hear them, and while I might not get to respond to every comment, at least not in a timely manner, I can guarantee that I read each of them. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss any future uploads. That's all for now, so until next time.